What's up, everybody? We are live. It's a Monday. How we doing? We're ready for the exam breakdown. The exam breakdown today, we're going to go over some more content to get you all ready for your real estate examinations. My name is D. Kumar. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Thanks for joining us. You know, it's important that we learn and we continue our forward momentum. It's exceptionally important to stay on target as we're doing stuff. And I was like, can we do it? Today's, in observance of Martin Luther King Day, who, by the way, has meant a lot to me as a person. And also, I wanted to do it in the name of the greatest heavyweight champion ever, Muhammad Ali, whose birthday was last Friday. And to me, Muhammad Ali, no one in my life as a figure of influence has ever meant more to me. This is my opinion. You can believe what you wish. But to me, it was Muhammad Ali, who inspires me to this day and inspires me every day. And he's just somebody that means a lot to me. So in honor of that, I say we remember some of the greatest, right? The greatest ever. Don't count the days. Make the days count. Every day is an important day to continue to work and do great things so we can make sure that we are training to get ahead and do the great things that we want to do. All right, so today we will work on some stuff. Now, I'm going to do a quick exam breakdown, nothing crazy. We're going to be, a little bit brief, but I want to go through a couple of Q&As that are very important. A lot of students have asked me these questions. Now, so my backstories with this educationally, I've been teaching, forever, ever. Even when I was a kid in school growing up, I would be a note taker for my classmates. I would help in some of my formative years. Teachers would like the way I learn things and explain things, so they would help. They would ask if I would explain things to some students and friends, and so I was always, sort of a helpful person around the educational circuit. I've always liked it. To me, there's something inside of me that always lights up when I'm showing somebody something or I'm learning something myself. And so one of the reasons why I like to do this is to help people. The real reason why they're doing this, obviously, you want to get past an examination and all this other stuff, but we really, really have other goals and ambitions. And that's what I'm trying to tap into. I'm trying to cut the drag off of learning the non-essential stuff, work on the essential stuff, and focus. Now, with this particular examination and the mortgage licensing examination, I've been a subject matter expert for a very long time. And by that, I mean I've trained tens of thousands of people doing this. I've helped so many folks pass examinations doing this, and it's not out of bragging. It's out of just love for the craft of education and trying to gamify this test. I want to make sure people understand that there's a lot of things that you don't really need to know. You don't need to become a real estate master at this initial, substantive knowledge of real estate. Take your life as a professional and really learn about real estate, but learn the procedural pieces as well. When you get in the field, you're going to be closing deals and maybe buying investment properties and growing. And all of these things are sort of this learning, active learning that kind of takes place. We need to get you past this exam first so we can move on. So let's go into these. These are questions over decades of me teaching and interacting with students, sort of figuring out where the confusion lies and knowing where things might lie on the exam. So this is why I'm doing these particular questions. All right, so first off, the question number one is, why is the borrower called the mortgagor and not the mortgagee? And I'm going to tell you, this is one of the biggest questions that students get wrong on real estate exams. They assume the mortgagor is the lender and the mortgagee is the borrower. And this is exactly the opposite of what the truth is. The truth is the borrower is the mortgagor. And they are giving a mortgage to the lender. A mortgage is a lien. So the word mortgage equals lien. A lien is a type of encumbrance on the property, and the borrower is allowing for a lien to be placed on the property in the name of the lender. So they are giving. The borrower is giving. The giver of something is the or. Like grantor is the seller. Grantee, the receiver of that thing, the E is in grantor, grantee, the buyer is the grantee. In borrowing, the lender is lending the borrower money subject to the borrower pledging their property as collateral in the event that they don't pay it back. So this pledging of property in exchange for loans is called hypothecation. You're pledging your property into the future in the event of default. And the mortgagor is the borrower. They are basically giving the mortgage, the lien right, to the lender, who's the mortgagee, the receiver of that right. So think of it this way. Or, the suffixes typically indicate the one giving, the give-or of something, and the E indicates the one that is receiving that something. And this is a classic one. This is not only on the real estate exam, they're going to reference this, they're also going to reference this on the mortgage loan originator's examination as well. This is probably the number one answer. Just a crazy FYI. I've trained rooms full of bankers, rooms full of bankers that have been banking for years and years and years and years. As a matter of fact, when they went to licensing for mortgage loan originators, I was in many of those training facilities for some of the biggest banks on the planet. Would have me come down and, hey, we need you to come in and train these guys. They have to take this test now. And I would ask the room. These are folks that have been writing loans and banking for years and in wealth management for years. And you would ask a room full of those guys and who's the mortgagor and who's the mortgagee. And like 99% of them would get it wrong. And so, and this is no rub to them by any means. It is just simple that so many people, including professionals, don't know the difference. And now you know the difference. So mortgagor is the borrower, mortgagee is the lender. You're going to see this on your exam. Question, the next one we got is, what kind of mortgage loan are partially amortized and are they common? And this is a question that dovetails directly in to the difference between full amortization and partial amortization. Now, in amortization, what it simply means is that full amortization means that the loan will fully retire itself by the last payment at the end of its term. So a fully amortizing loan for 30 years has 360 payments, and those payments are equal, and we're paying down a little bit of interest initially and a little bit of principal and a lot of interest initially, and then the curve catches up and we're paying more towards principal, but no matter what, the payments don't change. And as the payments stay the same, we're paying off that predictably for the next 360 payments or 30 years, and you're good to go. Full amortization, it is safe and predictable for most consumers. Now, we have other types of loans that are partially amortized, and partially amortized loans combine smaller monthly payments with a large balloon payment. That's probably the phrase on your exam, balloon payment. And these payments are a giant final payment. They are less common in residential real estate, but may be used in commercial financing or for other certain investment strategies. And sometimes people would rather just pay interest only and then pay a huge lump sum payment at the end of the transaction, utilize the loan proceeds, and maybe have an exit strategy. You see this quite often in development, land speculation transactions, and things of that nature, where you'll see partial amortization and you'll see a balloon. So these are all very, very common things that you see in the business, and you want to know the difference in the definitions of full amortization, partial amortization, and in some instances, negative amortization. Which of the following best describes a partially amortized loan? Letter A, a loan where equal payments are made over the term, fully paying off the principal and interest by the end. Letter B, a loan where payments cover only interest and the full principal is due at the end. Letter C, a loan with fixed payments that partially pay down the principal, but a lump sum payment is required at the end. Letter D, a loan that requires adjustable payments based on market interest rates. And the answer? Letter C, a loan with fixed payments that partially pay down, the key phrase here is partially pay down the principal, but a lump sum payment is required at the end. Another question in our armada of questions that I've gathered over the years is, what is the difference between eminent domain, condemnation, and dedication? Now, eminent domain and condemnation are guaranteed on real estate exams. Every one of y'all are going to get a question or so between the state exam and the general exam regarding eminent domain and the clarification, the distinction between condemnation and eminent domain. What is what? Okay, so definitely look out for that. Sometimes they will throw in the vocab phrase dedication as well. And so this is an important one that you definitely want to know. Okay, what is the difference? Eminent domain is the government's right to take private property for public use with compensation. So eminent domain is the constitutional right of government. So that's the right. Condemnation is the legal process used to exercise eminent domain. So condemnation is the process. Eminent domain is the right. So if they ask you a question about what is the process, that the answer is condemnation, not eminent domain. Bet your bottom dollar they're going to have condemnation and eminent domain in there to confuse you, okay? So remember, eminent domain is the right. Dedication occurs when a property owner voluntarily gifts land for public use, such as parks or roads. Dedication is what a developer might do when they're done with the construction of the development, and the roadways are sort of now there's two options. They can privately manage the roadway, the citizens that own the properties around the roadway, which is expensive, and you have to be in accordance with the Department of Transportation rules and regulations and all of these other things. Or you can dedicate them to the public, the town, and the town will take over. And sometimes they might have, for plowing and such, they might not have it in their budget. You still might have to plow. There could be an association. So there's lots of other things here. But dedication is this voluntarily giving the property back to public use for various purposes. It could be for parks as well. A city plans to build a public park on privately owned land. The landowner refuses to sell, and the city takes legal action to acquire the property. What is the legal process the city is using to obtain the land? Letter A, dedication. Letter B, eminent domain. Letter C, condemnation. Letter D, adverse possession. And that answer is condemnation. And remember, they are looking for the process, and they use that in the test question. If they say, what is the legal right the city is using to obtain the land, then the answer is letter B. So do you see the distinction? Eminent domain is the right. Condemnation is the process. They will split hairs here, and now you know this, and this is guaranteed. It's just like that mortgage or mortgagee logic. It's always on exams because it catches so many students. So many people get it wrong. And to complicate matters, I hear constantly, it's like, dude, yo, D, I just got I was right there. I got a 68% or 69. I missed it by 1 point. You hear this so much. Oh my gosh, over my lifetime as an educator for this particular discipline, so many other tests, I just missed it by that much. Man, if this is the question and you miss this, well, that's why you didn't pass. So now you're going to pass if you can get these right? So just keep thinking about it in terms of that. Next question. Why is an open listing considered a unilateral contract? And if you look back at our contracts discussions, and there's a variety of those that you can find on our YouTube channel. By the way, thanks for subscribing. It means a lot to us. Just the channel is growing by leaps and bounds, and students are passing all over the country. It pleases us greatly. So thank you very much for subscribing. If you haven't, please subscribe, because you're going to have a lot of information that's going to throw at you. And then we're building other verticals and other channel metrics and content that are going to help you with things beyond the examination. And so the goal is, hey man, I'm going to teach you how to get through this examination, but there's so much more that I have to teach you, so much more ways that I can show you how to make money and do all kinds of great things and sort of launch your career in a much, much more aggressive, much more proper way. And that's another reason why we need you to subscribe to this channel. All right. So what is an open listing considered? Why is it considered a unilateral contract? Remember, a unilateral contract, uni meaning one, means only one party needs to promise something in a unilateral contract. So this is pretty normal, and we want to know, sort of what is the difference and why is this? So an open listing is a unilateral contract because only the seller is obligated to pay a commission if the agent produces a ready, willing, and able buyer. The agent has no obligation to perform unless they choose to. Now, because there's only one party that has to perform, that's why it's a unilateral contract. So the open listing, now, an exclusive right to sell, now two promises are being made, and that's a bilateral contract. So you just want to remember that the open listing is unilateral, and that's something that you many times see on exams. The next question is, what is the difference between a foreclosure and a short sale? This is pretty common as well. A foreclosure occurs when a lender takes back the property due to the borrower's failure to make payments. A short sale happens when the lender allows the property to be sold for less than the loan balance to avoid a foreclosure. And so the foreclosure is really the final sort of nail in the coffin, if you will, when it comes to a default, or the final remedy action for a lot of lenders when it comes down to it. A short sale is more of this negotiated process where the property might be upside down, where the borrower owes more than the property is worth, and sort of there's this this demotivation to sell it, because if you sold it on the open market, you're never going to be able to get pay the lender back fully. So the lender has to look at their risk and say, all right, what's the best thing? If the lender took over a property that's upside down and the property's worth less than they loaned on it, well, then the process of foreclosure, the legal fees, the legal expenses, the time value of money, and all of these other allocation of resources is going to make the investment even worse. So many times they'll say, okay, fine, we'll saddle the borrower with a potential IOU, because don't forget, if the lender decides to forgive the differential between what is owed and what is gained at the short sale, it might still fall on the borrower's thing. So they might get a cancellation of debt, 1099 at the end of the year for the difference, and which could saddle the borrower with even more tax liabilities, because to a lender they're saying, well, if we're wiping off this bad debt, you just earned that money. So there's this debt forgiveness component, and then there's this ability for short sales as well. So short sales are more of this negotiation, and then they are allowing the borrower to sell the property for less than the lender is willing to accept to close the transaction and to walk away potentially from it. But the lender doesn't have to walk away. Just because you perform a short sale doesn't mean that they couldn't come back later and try to come after you in judgments for the remaining balance that you still owe. Jamie has fallen behind on his mortgage payments, and his lender is considering reclaiming the property. However, James, not Jamie, has an opportunity to sell the property for less than the remaining loan balance with the lender's approval. What is this situation called? Letter A, foreclosure. Letter B, short sale. Letter C, deed in lieu of foreclosure. Letter D, loan modification. And the answer is letter B, short sale. So a short sale is selling it for less than the remaining loan balance with the lender's approval. And a foreclosure would be reclaiming the property. So they use both definitions in this particular question to throw off the student. Now, another vocab phrase that you do want to know in this is deed in lieu of foreclosure. You can skip loan modification. I think that's a lower probability. It could show up as an answer, however. This is a pretty well-balanced question. And the writer in this particular question is sort of marrying two definitions. And in the end, there's this however, right? So however, there's this opportunity. And so sometimes students miss that simple little phrase and they'll pick foreclosure. They'll say, oh, this is falling behind. This is a foreclosure. They jump the gun. So be careful here. Read the interrogatory or the question carefully. And if you read the question carefully, you're going to find that that's a short sale all day long. All right. What is the difference between a general lien and a specific lien? That's a very classic question that you tend to see on exams. So let's take a quick peek here. A general lien applies to all of a person's property. Examples of general liens or lien creditors would be the government, the IRS, if you owe back taxes. Well, they can place a lien that goes across everything that you own. They can put a lien on personal property, real property. They can seize personal assets. So they can do whatever they need to. That's a general lien. Now, it's an involuntary general lien. I didn't want, all of my property to be liened up, but the government has the right to get paid. And if the government doesn't get paid, then they can't run the operations of the country. And if that's the case, then they can come after anything that you own to be able to satisfy that debt. Now, a mortgage is a specific lien, which only applies to a specific asset. So a mortgage lien is a specific lien, A general lien affects all property. Specific liens affect only specific properties. You definitely want to know a little bit about liens. You want to know what are voluntary liens versus involuntary liens. You want to know statutory liens versus equitable liens. You want to know general liens and specific liens, and you just want to understand how they all kind of come together. Like a real estate tax lien, I don't want that lien placed on my property. It's only specific to that property if I don't pay my real estate taxes. So it would be involuntary, statutory, which meaning that we wrote a law that says if you don't pay this back, then this is what's going to happen. And so it's involuntary, statutory, and specific. Whereas an IRS tax lien or a judgment lien in court would be involuntary. It would be potentially equitable because the court decides that, or if it's the IRS, then it's a statutory, and it would be general. Judgments and the government, when it comes to taxes and that kind of stuff, can place general liens. The only exception with governmental liens being specific in our case study is real estate tax liens, which aren't general liens, they are specific liens. All right, so you want to know and be able to sort through these. These are going to be useful. John owes the IRS a significant amount in unpaid taxes, and a lien is placed on all of his assets, including his home, car, and bank accounts. In contrast, Paul has a lien placed on his home because of an unpaid mortgage. Which of the following best describes the type of liens involved? Letter A. Both John and Paul are subject to specific liens. Letter B. John has a general lien while Paul has a specific lien. Letter C. John has a specific lien while Paul has a general lien. Letter D. Both John and Paul are subject to general liens, loan modification. And the answer? Letter B. John has a general lien while Paul has a specific lien. Remember, John has an IRS. He owes back taxes, and they can place a lien on all of John's assets. And then Paul has a lien placed specifically on his home, so that's a specific lien. Many times they will use the words specific or on all of their assets. So sometimes students get confused when they see stuff like this. Just read it really carefully and you'll be okay. This is one of those questions where they're looking at two different things. Sometimes students might get confused about who has what, so be very careful. If you have scratch paper, scrap paper, whatever, that like a paddle, they'll give you like a dry erase marker or whatever. Write that down, right? I would write John equals IRS general lien. I would write that down, and then Paul has specific lien or something like that, so you're not getting confused as to what each one is. Another question in our list is, what is the purpose of a deed of trust? And sometimes you see trust deeds. A deed of trust is used as a security instrument in some states. It involves three parties: the borrower as a trustor, the lender as the beneficiary, and a neutral third party known as the trustee. So in essence, what's happening is we are creating a trust. And they call this a deed of trust. So in some states, we just simply use the mortgage. The lender is given the right of the mortgage, so they are the mortgagee, and then they loan the money, and then that's it. The borrower has the deed in their name, and if they default, then the lender can come after them, foreclose on the mortgage lien, and try to sell and reclaim the property. In a deed of trust, a third party is holding on to the title to the property, and if they default, then they can just relinquish it to the lender. So that's called a deed of trust. Think of a car payment, right? Like you're driving around in your car, but you don't have the title in your name to the vehicle. The title is in the bank's name, or it's being held by the bank or the bank's representative, which is the trustee. Once you go to sell that car or you've paid off your car loan, then they mail you the title and the title is now yours. So it's very similar to that logic, okay? But in this is in real estate. So we're talking about a deed and we're talking about this trust arrangement and lending. So you want to look at that. And there's three parties. It's the mechanics of a trust, and the trustee holds on to title until the loan is paid off. All right. There was our Q&A for today's exam breakdown. I hope you found it helpful. Thank you once again for tuning in and checking this stuff out. If you missed it live, no big deal. We do it every Monday and every Wednesday. On Wednesdays, we help the folks studying for their loan originators licensing examination. On Mondays, we help the folks looking to study for their real estate brokers and real estate licensing salesperson's examination. This stuff is everywhere, all the states, everywhere, all the time. This is what you need to know if you want to pass that examination. My name is D. Kumar. Thank you very much for tuning in and checking us out. Thank you for subscribing to our channel if you have. If you haven't, please consider doing so. We're going to deliver lots of educational content, even far beyond the real estate examinations. However, it is one of my missions to help you pass, to learn what you need to know, and especially what you don't need to know while you're focusing and studying for this examination. I look forward to the next exam breakdown. The next one is coming up this Wednesday for mortgage professionals, then following Monday, and I'll see you then live. Ask your questions, ask anything you can, and we'll see if we can answer and opine to those questions and figure things out. If there's something you'd like us to teach, please let us know and we'll consider it. We'll put it on the thing. We're putting out a bunch of content that recently students had asked us questions about, and we're manufacturing all that content right now. And we're also coming out with some really, really big things in 2025 to help you guys get through those examinations. Thank you for all of your support once again. And I'm going to leave you with a little quote from Dr. Martin Luther King today on education, as I think that this is pretty important to remember and consider as we remember him today. So the function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character. That is the goal of true education.